On the reaction this week.
Is it time for the Prince and Princess of Wales to come clean about what's really going on?
And after allies of Meghan Markle no less waded into the debate over that Mother's Day photograph, they're facing an hypocrisy row all of their own. Because guess what? They doctored their own pictures. Royal author and biographer Tom Bower will be joining us to share his trenchant thoughts.
Plus, Boris Johnson is threatening to make an election comeback to support the Tories on the doorstep. Will he or won't he?
And Cheltenham, of all places, it's going woke as it renames Ladies' Day Style Day so that men can be included. Is nothing sacred anymore?
And welcome to The Reaction with me, Sarah Vine.
And me, Andrew Pearce. We're here every Wednesday on the Daily Mail's YouTube channel, so make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss a single episode. Now, it's been another tumultuous week for the royal family, with allies of the Princess of Wales telling this very newspaper the furore over that now infamous edited Mother's Day picture has left Kate shell-shocked.
The Princess has apologised and admitted that the picture was doctored after it was withdrawn by international agencies. But it has done little to quash conspiracy theories, which have now reached fever pitch. Now,
well, you've been very hard on her.
I haven't been hard on her. No, I haven't. No,
and I suspect you've had readers saying, hands off our princess.
I'm in quite a lot of trouble with quite a lot of readers, but I would like to just explain what I'm trying to say, which is that this picture being altered digitally by the princess, which is a weird thing to do anyway, don't they have, I mean, you know, isn't there someone in the palace press office who can do that?
Why do they need to alter it digitally anyway?
I mean, who cares if
the kids aren't all looking in the same camera at the same time?
The fact that this has happened has come at the end of a sort of series of unfortunate events. You know, William not turning up for his godfather's funeral. Everything has just been slightly off, and that's the problem. And, you know, it's just ironic that a picture that was designed to sort of quash all the mad... the conspiracy theories online about the princess are insane and very unpleasant.
And the photos made it worse. One of them I saw...
And the thing is, the irony is the picture was supposed to quash all of that, and it's just made it much worse. And plus, there's another weird thing about the picture, which is that she isn't wearing her wedding ring. So I think if you were going to alter one thing about that picture, it would be that I would have photoshopped the wedding ring back in again.
It was the first thing I noticed, and I thought, why would they put that photograph out? Because you could have obscured her hands quite easily.
So what I'm basically saying is whoever's advising them, and I have said this before because we had that whole thing with William making a speech about ceasefires the day before a vote about that in the House of Commons. There's nothing wrong with him making a speech about ceasefire in Gaza. That's completely okay. But you don't do it the day before a vote in Parliament because it looks as though you might be trying to influence Parliament, which is not...
Poor judgment.
Exactly. So whoever's advising them is not doing their job, because if I were advising them and I would have looked at that photograph and I would have said, ma'am, this is a lovely photograph of you and your children, but you're not wearing your wedding ring. Are you sure that's what you want to put out there? I mean, if you want to, that's completely fine, but you just need to understand that that will go down in a certain way.
And you would have thought she, of all people, would have been alive to that.
Yes, exactly.
I would have thought so, because we know celebrities, and I'm not saying the royals are celebrities, when their marriages break up, we often know the marriage because they conspicuously don't wear the ring.
And I actually feel really sorry for the Princess of Wales because she's had a very unpleasant operation. She's obviously not very well. And I've said this again before, I don't see why she has to tell anyone what's wrong with her. That's her business. It's a medical thing. But the problem is just the way the whole thing has been handled has just made it much worse. And now there's a sort of layer of distrust that's creeping in on with all this stuff.
And of course, we do have to be able to trust the royal family. And of course, just before we bring in Tom Bower, or biographer, this was released as a news photograph. The industry rules are absolutely clear. There is to be no manipulation of a news photograph because, if you remember, Piers Morgan lost his job on the Daily Mirror because a photograph appeared in the Mirror suggesting that British troops were abusing Iraqi prisoners.
And it wasn't real.
It was a completely fictitious photograph.
I mean, that's the reason why the photo agencies issued a kill order on it, because they realised that it had been... This wasn't the British media doing this, it was the photograph agencies that said, look, this is not okay.
The British Press Association was the last to issue the kill order.
Exactly.
Let's bring in the royal biographer and author Tom Bower. Tom Bower, hello to you. This has been a tumultuous week, to put it mildly, and it's not been handled well by Kensington Palace. Is that where the criticism should lie? The people who are supposed to be advising the Prince and Princess of Wales, or should we be blaming the Princess herself?
Well, I don't think we should blame the Princess at all. She's recovering from a serious operation, and I think she was pressured into doing this photo shoot because people thought that that would somehow stop the dreadful ghouls and the trolls on the social media. But absolutely, you're right. The advice she's getting, the private secretaries, both in Kensington Palace and in Buckingham Palace, are just not up to the job. And we saw that very much with Andrew and Fergie leading the congregation into St. George's Chapel. We saw it very much with William's ill-advised intervention about a ceasefire for humanitarian aid in Gaza. He had no business getting involved in that terrible situation. And I think altogether what we're seeing is the erosion of good advice, because the King Charles himself, has always only wanted to be advised by yes men. He's always fired those who have opposed what he wanted to do. And I fear that Prince William is going the same way.
That's very interesting that you say that, because that's what I'm also hearing, which is that basically he will not listen to anybody who tells him things that he doesn't want to hear.
I think that's unfortunately led them into this situation now, because I think that Kate is absolutely exemplary. I think she's the fate and future of the royal family. She's a wonderful person, and she's finding it difficult to recover from a major operation. And the public knows enough. You know, she had abdominal surgery back after Easter, if that, and that should be enough. And the palace, instead of saying we're not going to say any more, I think pressured her into taking this photograph and releasing it. And naturally, she was vain. How would her children look? She wanted to be perfect and all the rest. And so she's exposed herself to this problem, which is most unfortunate. However, I must say, Andrew, I don't think that it's a major crisis. I think it'll all be over by the weekend. There'll be other major issues to concern people, but it hasn't been good week for the royal family.
What would you say to those people watching and listening to this, Tom, who would say, for God's sake, it's a mum trying to improve her husband's pretty lousy amateur photograph, because we know William took the photograph. She thinks she's a pretty good photographer because she's taken, so she doctored the photographs. It was the picture agencies used the word manipulated, which is quite an emotive word to use. She would just say, I just edited them to try to make them look better. So in which case, what's the fuss about?
Well, I think unfortunately the fuss is that people have raised the issue that she is not really ill, and all the other mad speculation that has dogged her in the last few weeks. The real issue should have been they should have got a professional press association photographer in, and that would have been the end of it. But somehow they think they know better, and they've now learnt their lesson. They won't.
But have they? But have they,
again.
Tom? Do you think they have learnt their lesson? Because you talked about the missteps. We've seen the decision of Prince William to wade into the debate about the Middle East. Oh my God, did he do that? Not turning up at Windsor Castle, Prince Andrew leading the crowd in. We still don't know why he didn't turn up at that event for his godfather. And now another debate, 3 in the space of 3 or 4 weeks.
And also the sort of argument between the Ministry of Defence and Kensington Palace about whether the princess was going to go to
Trooping the
colour or not. I mean, the thing is, it seems to me that you're completely right. That whoever's advising them either is rubbish at their job, or they're simply not listening to them. And either way, it's not making their lives any easier. What do you think about the wedding ring situation? I mean, would you have? I mean, I would never have allowed her to put out a photograph in which she wasn't wearing her wedding ring.
Well, the problem is, of course, that her medical condition may well have prevented her wearing it because her fingers swelled up.
Yeah.
And that is the problem. She's ill. She's recovering from major surgery.
But they could have obscured her hand, Tom, in the photograph.
Or
her
just
hands
said,
could have been obscured.
I'm not wearing my wedding ring because I can't, because the doctors told me
Easy
not
just to
to.
obscure the hands.
Better still not to publish the photograph
I agree,
and raise all the questions. That's the problem, that we're dealing with a royal crisis of people. They are ill, they're old, and there are very few of them. I mean, they're just making themselves vulnerable to the sniping from Montecito. The Sussexes think they're having a field day, and that's the problem.
But you mentioned Montecito, Tom. There is a bitter irony that a story has been leaked to one of the New York papers, one of the few that is sympathetic to Meghan and Harry, saying Meghan would never have got herself into this mess. She would never have dreamed of editing a photograph. There was a photograph released by Meghan and Harry, which was the Press Association did the same thing with, because they said it had been doctored. So.
Well, it features in my book Revenge, a very important book in all this.
Yes.
Miss Anne Harriman, the photographer of Meghan lying on a field when she was pregnant, had an olive tree behind her. Well, Harriman was in London. They were obviously in California, and he imposed this olive tree behind them. It's a stunningly beautiful photograph, but completely phony. And that is the whole problem with the Sussexes. They are complete and utter hypocrites.
Yeah.
But they're always looking for an opportunity to snipe at Kate. And Omid Scobie's depiction of Kate, and Meghan's depiction of Kate in the Oprah Winfrey interview, and Harry's depiction of Kate in his autobiography Spare, have all been unbelievably nasty and negative and gratuitously awful. And that's the problem she's under. She is unprotected from these mischievous people. And unfortunately, they spew out their poison, and her staff are not protecting her just now when she's so vulnerable. And I feel very, very sorry for her.
But you know what strikes me at the moment, Tom? I thought before the Queen died, I thought this country will go into some form of crisis with the loss of the great Queen Elizabeth II. I sort of sense it's pervading the royal family now. We are really beginning to feel the absence of this great lady who for 70 years held that institution together with firmly and with wisdom, and we're feeling her absence more and more, I think, every week.
Oh, I do absolutely agree with you. I think Charles did quite well in the first year to gather the sort of support he needed, but with his illness, he's now absent. Camilla the Queen can't fill the void. But most of all, I think there's a problem in the relationship between the King and Prince William, that the King isn't able to say to William, this works and this doesn't, because we know the whole history between them prevents King Charles in any way advising and warning and encouraging his son. And that is a major problem, and I do agree with you. I think that we are sliding into a crisis. We need the return of Christopher Geidt, the great Christopher Geidt, who was the Queen's private secretary, who wisely anticipated a lot of these problems and was then fired on the orders of Prince Charles and Prince Andrew. And that is the problem.
Yeah.
Tom, I think the best thing is for you to become the advisor to the King immediately, and then all these problems will go away.
Only problem is, you better hope that he hasn't read Tom's book, because he wasn't always that flattering.
He has, Andrew, and he didn't like it.
I'm sure he didn't, Tom. However, I did, and I think Sarah and I did. Tom Bauer, always a joy to talk to you. He doesn't put his punches, does he? And I'm glad Tom confirmed that story about Meghan, because it is a staggering piece of hypocrisy. This New York newspaper, I think it's New York Times, has ran a story briefed from Meghan and Harry saying, Meghan would never have made that mistake. She couldn't possibly.
But the thing
and
is,
that
Andrew,
photograph was manipulated.
Obviously, but what I would say is that at least Meghan uses a professional when she's doctoring her photographs.
Yes,
so,
right.
you know, the point about this photograph is that it was done amateurly. It was done by the princess at home in front of her sort of Apple Mac. She's recovering from an operation. She shouldn't have to be doing that kind of stuff. She should just. I mean, the other thing to say about the Princess of Wales is that she has had the most awful couple of years because of all that stuff from the Montecito Moaners. And, you know, I think the Queen was someone who she found particularly stabilising. I think, you know, so she, I mean, who knows why she's ill? But all I would say is that stress has a very serious effect on the body.
Of course it does.
And, you know, so, you know, if I had been advising her, I would have said, just ignore it all. Just put your fingers in your ears. Don't worry about what people are saying online. Don't do anything.
Apparently, she doesn't even look at social media.
No.
But somebody's probably told her.
Anyway.
Well, what do you think? Do you agree with me that Sarah and I may have been a little bit too hard on the Princess of Wales? Although I do think the photograph was a mistake, because those rules are quite clear. A news photograph, the agencies who put them out, such as Reuters, who effectively issued the kill order, cannot run a news photograph if it has been manipulated. It's got to be as it was taken. So let us know your thoughts. You email reaction@dailymail.co.uk or you comment below.
Now, last week, we discussed the Ministry of Defence being forced to retract a statement that the Princess of Wales would be attending Trooping in June.
Maxine on YouTube said, Princess Catherine shouldn't have to tell us about her health unless she wants to. She should have her privacy.
Overwhelmingly, most of you agree with Maxine, but Yvette on YouTube says, I would say the royals are creating the rumour by not being transparent. After all, the people are concerned about Kate because they care. I think that's a very good point.
I think that is a good point. If my
you
mum
don't
was still
say
alive,
anything,
she
you
would
create a
want to
vacuum.
me to say, she'd be on to me all the time, what's wrong with her?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people genuinely love the royals. And I think Kate is amongst the most loved. The Princess of Wales, that we should call her. And if you're watching, Mum, we're wishing you well. Carol also says the royal family would be much better off if they would just tell the truth. By keeping everything so vague and secretive, they're just making it more difficult on everyone.
And Marcia says, we aren't saying Kate shouldn't have her privacy, we just want to know she's all right.
And of course, the photograph was supposed to tell us just
But
that.
it's done the opposite.
And it's done completely the opposite. Now, we always love reading your reactions, particularly when you disagree with Sarah and agree with me, which is quite often the majority
I think
case.
this is becoming a sport now.
Yes. You can comment below or you email reaction@dailymail.co.uk.
Now, Boris is back, sort of. Well, maybe. There have been reports this week that he is expected to return to the Conservative fold to help with election campaigning in the Red Wall. When has Boris ever helped?
Aye, indeed. This week alone, of course, has seen further dire polling numbers for the Conservatives, and the former party deputy chairman, who was on this programme just a couple of weeks ago, has defected to Reform UK. We asked him if he would go, and he wouldn't tell us. And now the party's biggest donor, Frank Hester, has been embroiled in a racism row involving the Labour MP, Diane Abbott. So will Boris Johnson actually be able to save Rishi Sunak? Sarah, here's my theory on this. This story was on the front page of the Times the day after Lee Anderson has defected to Reform UK. He is the living embodiment of everything that the Tories need in the Red Wall, and that he speaks the language of ordinary people. And the Times reports that Boris Johnson and Rishi are getting on a lot better, and that he will campaign behind the Red Wall, but there are a few giveaways in there. They won't campaign together, Boris and Rishi, because Boris would upstage Rishi because he's a formidable campaigner, and they're getting on a lot better. But he didn't say when they last spoke, so I can reveal exclusively. They last spoke briefly when they exchanged pleasantries at the Cenotaph on Remembrance Sunday. That was in November, and apparently Boris is saying, I will campaign for Rishi and the Tories if Rishi picks up the phone and asks him. That ain't going to happen.
I personally think that Boris Johnson is not going to touch this election with a barge pole, on the basis that he would like to make a comeback, and he's going to let Rishi hang himself in whatever way he
Own
does.
the mess.
Own this defeat. He doesn't want. Boris doesn't want to be in opposition. Boris is not that sort of politician. He's not the sort of politician who likes to sort of knuckle down and do lots of due diligence and lots of really important but boring things that don't get him any.
You're suggesting he's a little bit lazy?
No, I'm just saying that he likes the shiny, bright things.
Yes.
And I think what the Tory party will need after this election, if the polls are right, is a period of reflection and rebuilding and reconstruction and general restructuring. And Boris is not a manager. He's a chief executive. He's a big ideas man. He's not a sort of And so I think he'll want to let that task go to somebody else. Who that will be, I don't know.
Yeah, good luck with that.
And then I think what he'll do is probably wait in the wings, and when the time is right, when there's a by-election, when Labour are having a rough time, as they inevitably will do at some point, they'll get something wrong, and there'll be a by-election. He'll pop in there and get himself back. For
once, I think we're going to probably agree, because look, Boris is a brilliant campaigner. I've been on the road with Boris when he was mayor, when he was foreign secretary. When he was Prime Minister. It is the most extraordinary reaction. It's like being with a rock star. People are shouting at, they're winding their car windows down. People want to be photographed with him. Builders on ladders are shouting. It is the most extraordinary. I hadn't seen that since Mrs. T, who was an amazing campaigner too. Two blonde bombshells.
Well, I think that I've always said that Boris was like he was a bit like Britain's Silvio Berlusconi. He was a sort of character who had many flaws, or has many flaws, but ordinary people who also have many flaws, and get things wrong and mess their lives up and have too many children by women they probably shouldn't have children, you know, all that kind of stuff. So he resonates with you know, ordinary people, and they feel an affinity with him, and they also feel that he is not, you know, they don't feel that he's a sort of imposing superior presence that they can't talk to.
Yeah,
you know?
and there's a difference between him and David Cameron.
Yeah, who was like that.
Yeah, David Cameron went to Eton, so did Boris. David Cameron, you always felt you were in the presence of somebody who was terribly entitled, and went to Eton, whereas Boris wore his big intellect very lightly, and his class very lightly, and David Cameron couldn't, and always seemed like, as Nadine Dorris famously said, with George Osborne, two posh boys.
Well, I mean, David Cameron was very much a head boy character, whereas, you know, Boris is a sort of, you know, naughty.
He would never been the class swot,
behind
would he?
the bike sheds smoking bags when he
throwing the ink pellets.
Yes. He's sort of just William.
Cheeking the teacher. Yeah, which is why I liked him. But I still think if they can mobilise him, they will. But what I think will happen will be he will go on the campaign trail to support his mates. But
I mean, you know, if he goes up to the Red Wall, what will happen is everybody up there will say, "Oh, Boris, we're so sad that you're not Prime Minister anymore."
We'd vote Tory if you were the leader.
We would vote you Tory, and there'll be lots of nice clips of people saying that to him, which will mysteriously find their way onto the internet, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And that will, you know, that will be good for Boris.
Yeah, also he's rather enjoying life not being in the firing line, and he's also got a book to write on William Shakespeare. It was due in 2016. He's also writing his memoir. 2016, his book, Stanley Johnson has just completed his book, that's Boris's father, on Marco Polo. Do you know when he started it? 62 years ago, so you may have a bit longer to wait for Boris's biography on Boris's biography on Shakespeare was due to come out in 2016, the 400th anniversary of Shakespeare's death. I think it'll be about the 450th anniversary of his death, the way it's going on. Not that I'm going to buy it anyway.
I quite like to read Boris on Shakespeare. Anyway, we'd love to know your thoughts. Please email reaction@dailymail.co.uk, or you can comment below.
Can't stand it. Cheltenham Festival has gone woke. They've scrapped Ladies' Day, which is today, Wednesday, and they've rebranded it Style Day, which sees fashion prizes given out to both men and women. It is unbelievable.
No, see, I thought you'd love this,
Why?
because then you can go along and get a prize for being so stylish.
Look, the rosettes go to the horses. And Ladies' Day is fun. It's the royal day. We see
Well, it's when
Queen
everybody
Camilla.
dresses up in a hat, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And vertiginous heels.
Vertiginous heels, and then they
and
drink,
sometimes they topple over because they've had too much
and then they
Prosecco.
drink too much overpriced Prosecco and fall over.
Look, the best Ladies' Day is at Anfield, it has to be said, when the Sun newspaper in particular devotes about 9 pages to
it's
it.
Brilliant.
But Ladies' Day has gone. Now, the Jockeys Club are trying to tell us...
Do you think this is to do with a trans sort of
It'll
woke
be all
stuff?
this woke stuff.
Yeah.
The Jockeys Club are trying to say it was never Ladies' Day. Yes, it was. It's been Ladies' Day for decades and decades. Why do we have to change something?
But it was always Ladies' Day because the Queen was there.
Yes.
That was the origin of Ladies' Day. Is that right?
And the
Am I
Queen
right?
Mother would be there.
So the idea is that the Queen was there, and therefore all the ladies,
that's right,
presumably the ladies in waiting, I'm
all there,
assuming,
and they dress up,
would turn up, and they'd all
in
look
their
fabulous,
hats
and then
and
it sort
their
of turned into a fashion show.
Yeah, and
I don't know. Is that the origin? I'm making it up.
No,
if you know better than me, please let us know.
That is the origin, and I cannot see why they now have to call it Style Day. Who was demanding the change? Why? Did you hear a clamour at Cheltenham
There was
races?
no clamour, no, I didn't hear the
cannot have Ladies' Day. We mustn't have Ladies' Day. It will cause deep offence. If it causes deep offence, good. Because what's wrong with it? Why do we have?
And also,
why don't we have Men's Day?
But
then?
also, the other thing about the men is that they all just wear penguin suits.
They do.
So what's there's nothing interesting
and
about
hats, and some of them wear barbers.
Yeah.
And it's just, I just think some things should be sacred.
Yes,
and
it's tradition.
And my first ever job was on a local newspaper in Cheltenham in Gloucestershire.
Yeah.
Gold Cup week, the most fantastic atmosphere in Cheltenham.
Yeah.
And Wednesday, Ladies' Day, oh my God, we'd be out with the photographs and you'd stop people, you've seen outfits you've never seen before.
Amazing hats.
Amazing hats. Yeah. And I'm afraid the women just won't bother. No. And that's a great shame. Yeah. The milliners should unite to oppose this.
Yes, that's
because
correct.
Boys and hats are not very good.
No.
Because they just wear flat
Do you want
caps.
to know what's bothering me this week?
Yes.
It's animals again. So...
Well, you keep threatening to bring the dog.
I will bring the dog one day. But, so vets, this has been a thing that's been driving me mad for a while now. vets, all the nice little independent vets have all been bought up by these big companies, and that basically they're all chains now, and it's no longer about animals or the owners, it's just about the bottom line. And owners of animals are being priced out of the vet market. So there was a story yesterday, I think, about some poor woman who ended up having to pay £14,000 for her cat. And I've got 2 animals, and I'm quite lucky they don't go to the vet very much. But it is just becoming prohibitively expensive. I mean, it costs more now for me to get my dog's teeth, for my dog to have a hygienist appointment. It costs more for my dog than it does for me. Yeah. It's £500 for my dog to have a hygienist appointment, and it's £60 for me.
And you haven't even started on the insurance companies, because they're part of the same thing.
And at the same time, the insurance companies have all been bought up by these great big companies, and they also just won't pay out anymore.
I know.
And I've got the situation with my dog. She's now she's 8, so she goes into a different bracket.
Yeah.
And unless you've, it is they will stop paying for stuff, and it's just outrageous.
The trouble is as well, because
I've
got 2 cats, Rosie and Minnie, and I've moved vets because on this particular day, I don't know what was wrong with Rosie, but the vet said, "Oh, what should we say? Why don't we say £1,000?" I said, "No. Why don't we say a fully itemised bill?"
But also,
if you don't mind.
Also, the other thing that's happened is that they push stuff on you the whole time.
They do.
So they're always trying to sell you
drugs.
Treatments, drugs, things. They will absolutely always go the most expensive route.
Like
Whereas a good
sell.
vet will go, you're just a granny and you haven't got very much money, and this is your beloved cat, and you know what, we can probably just get away with doing this tiny little thing and it'll be fine. They won't do that anymore. All of that sort of personal. I don't know, vets are a bit like doctors. You sort of think it's a vocation rather than
You should encourage your children to go into veterinary science, because they will be millionaires, and they will keep you in the lifestyle.
I really wanted my daughter to be a vet.
They will keep you in the lifestyle to which you think you should have been accustomed. Yeah. That's what you need. The People's Dispensary for Sick Animals, which were set up to help poorer people, they must have queues around the block now.
Absolutely.
Particularly if you're a pensioner and your dog or your cat is your only companion, and they can't afford it. I think it's wicked.
It's all absolutely wicked. Anyway, if you feel as strongly as I do about this, please let us know. You can message us on any of the week's talking points, comment below, or email at reaction@dailymail.co.uk.
So we're joined now by our showbiz guru, Katie Hind, who's going to tell us all about the new lineup this week on This Morning. Even I know who they are.
I know.
It's not Ellie Goulding, a person I never heard of. It's Kat
Deeley
and Ben Shepherd.
Yeah, Kat Deeley doesn't have any songs, so I don't have to sing one.
That's a shame.
I know.
Because you sound beautifully.
But she
you
does
had a whole new career beginning.
She does have jeans, apparently.
She's wearing, yesterday.
Not jeans, but trouser jeans.
Yes. The Kat certainly got viewers talking yesterday because she wore jeans and knee-high boots, which is a first for a This Morning host.
I think that she looked fabulous, number one. Number two, I hate TV clothes on the whole. I hate those sort of TV dresses that all the lady presenters are forced to wear. They just also awful kind of bright colours, and they're always so tight, and they're quite hard work.
And they always tell us they're high street.
Yeah, and then there's always a photograph on Instagram beforehand saying, I got this from, wherever it is, Marks and Spencer's, whatever.
Well, Judy Finnegan used to wear very sort of smart suits,
trouser suits,
or skirt suits. That's what I remember from back in the day. And then you had Holly Willoughby, who of course did post on Instagram every morning. Look at my designer dress that I'm wearing. Look at my high. And actually, for a time, it sold out. These clothes sold out really quickly. I mean, she was obviously very, very popular at that time. So it's quite refreshing. Not only has Kat not decided to go on Instagram and say, hey, look at what I'm wearing. She's wearing jeans. I mean, her first day she wore and Other Stories dress. It was £135 from the high street. But she's using This Morning's own stylists rather than others, like Susanna Reid, Holly, many of them, Christine Lappard, they all use quite expensive.
So she's but this is her way of saying I'm doing it differently.
Yes, it's her way of doing it, saying she's doing it differently. And also it was a worry. I mean, ITV were desperate and they jumped through hoops to get Kat, and they almost didn't get her on several occasions. But one thing that really worried them was that she was going to be too Hollywood, Tinseltown, glamorous.
Because she's been in America for a long time.
She's been in America since 2005, and she's hosted a big evening talent show for Nigel Lithgow, you know, very much sort of X Factor-esque type show. So there was a worry that she was going to be too glossy.
Right.
So I think
she's quite girl next door, isn't she?
Yeah.
And that's what people want, don't
but
they?
she always was back in the day. Before
was.
she went to, I'm so old, I can remember her being on television before she went to America. Wasn't she on Saturday?
She was on
morning?
CD UK, which was, and she was kind of Ant and Dec's
right.
mate.
Yeah.
You know, and they loved her, and you know, they were really funny.
But she was sort of part. She was part of that sort of ladette culture, wasn't she?
Yeah, she kind of came along at the end of the ladette.
But I mean,
culture.
apart from how she looks and all the rest of it, because we always talk about that, we don't talk about how Ben Shepherd looks, particularly.
Well, I think Ben Shepherd looks lovely.
Well, he's a very nice bloke.
We love
Ben
Ben Shepherd.
But she's a very good presenter.
They're pros. And it's also worth pointing out that these two hadn't met since, like, they hadn't seen each other since they were both hired for the show. So they hadn't sat together. There was no testing of the chemistry. There was no rehearsal. They met on Sunday for a walk through the studio. That's the first time they'd met in the capacity of being presenters on This Morning. So, but ITV was so confident because they're both such pros. I mean, obviously very different backgrounds. Ben, Kat's been in Los Angeles for 19 years. Ben's been sort of, trudging away on the ITV
and he does
daytime
a lot of football programmes.
Yeah, he's very good.
He also tries to
to be
engage
fair
me
to
about
Kat
it.
Deeley, I don't think it would matter what she wears. She is very.
She is. Yeah,
and it's gone down well with the viewers?
Yeah, it's going. There was some criticism. You can't please everyone, can you? That they should have changed the set more.
Yes.
Apparently,
there was a sort of slightly strange photograph of Rod Stewart looking a bit bemused, as though he didn't really know who anyone was.
No.
But maybe he's just got to that stage in his life.
I think he
comes to us all.
He doesn't care. And he was asked about private jets. He said, "Well, I've made a lot of money. I want to spend it how I like." And I thought, "Good on you.
Exactly.
You're not running for office."
I mean, they were also very pleased with their lineup from the first day,
Right.
which obviously they wanted to come back with a bang.
Yeah.
And for them, it's the beginning of a new chapter, and they want to sort of erase the whole Phil and Holly.
But it was really important they got this right, because that programme is a big money spent.
Yes.
So tell us about the next story, which is Louis Walsh. What's he been up to?
Well, Louis Walsh, who is the most bitchiest.
He's
man
quite catty, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
I don't know. I know one or two men who give him a run for his
I don't
money.
know, I'm not
Don't
sure.
look at me, Sarah Brown.
So last night he was on telly, and
Is this in Big Brother?
he's on Celebrity Big Brother, yes.
Yeah.
So he and Sharon Osbourne were hired to stir things up.
Yes.
And he decided to come out and say that Jedward, the Irish brothers,
Who won a talent show about 20,000
they didn't win,
years ago.
they were on the X Factor in 2009. Louis called them vile.
Why
they
vile?
have come out.
They're not vile. They're just a bit
vile. They were
silly.
just two silly little
Just a couple
boys,
of
weren't
weirdos,
they?
weren't they, really? Odd.
I mean, who gripped the nation?
They didn't grip me.
Well, I mean, they were written about. They got some column inches. I mean, trust me, I was writing about them at the time. But
I always put them in the same bracket as the cheeky girls. Do you remember?
Yes. One of them went out with the Liberal Democrat MP.
Lembit Opit.
Lembit Opit.
Indeed, yes. Yeah. And so
Why vile? Because that's quite a pejorative word.
Well, I know. I mean, especially coming from Louis. Yeah. And then they've hit back, as they do on social media, and they've called him an evil manipulator and a cold-hearted B-word.
Oh.
Which we shan't say on this show. So it's all kicking off.
Can I just ask a question? I hate to be cynical here, but you don't think they've organised this between them so that Jedward can get on the telly for a bit?
I do.
Well, I mean...
And Louis Walsh will turn out to be their manager.
Exactly.
That's my theory.
He'll be getting a cut.
A big cut.
Because quite honestly...
Well, I don't know, because...
They've kissed and made up.
The reason I'm not sure
evil
about that...
manipulator and the vile
man,
brothers,
But then, he also called Ronan Keating a very nasty word.
Did he?
Too,
Nice.
yes. So I think he's gone on there to kind of really try and ramp things up.
He's also trying to be the Mr. Nasty guy who used to be the X Factor judge.
But the problem is Louis...
Well, Simon Cowell's not been around very much, so presumably he's trying to get into that
Fill the vacuum.
Yes. Well,
Simon Cowell's role.
I guess as well, Louis probably needs to be a bit careful because he made a lot of enemies back in the day.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've seen the last of this one.
So for once, Big Brother's interesting, particularly as they booted out that horrible brother of the Princess of Wales' uncle.
Well, he was horrible to go first, though. He was absolutely horrible. And the demands he was making for his exit interview were appalling.
What, financial?
Yeah, he wanted £20,000 on Saturday.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Not worth 20
No,
pence.
No, he watched himself back
Yeah.
and thought that he was very...
Sharon Osbourne killed
worth
him
it.
from the word go.
Yeah.
She fixed
Yeah.
him with that glare
Yeah.
and you thought, he's out.
She didn't like him, did she?
No, I didn't either. Did you?
No.
I'm completely indifferent to him.
Right.
Anyway,
The viewers didn't like him because he went first.
And they didn't like him being in there because they knew he was in there to trade
Yeah.
on the Princess of Wales and her family at a time when she is having a very difficult
Yes.
time. Wrong timing, Gaza.
yes.
Uncle
I think
Gary.
the show that actually they should do is they should just have Sharon Osbourne and Louis Walsh just being mean to celebrities.
Yeah,
that would be a great.
Oh, we'd love that.
That would be a great show.
Glued
Can
to
you
it.
imagine?
Yes, thanks, Katie. That was fascinating as ever. And if you have any opinions, do let us know by commenting below, or you can email us at reaction@dailymail.co.uk. Thanks, Katie.
See you next
Thank you.
week.
See you next week.
That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Join us again next Wednesday if you can for more reaction to the stories making the headlines.
And don't forget to make sure you like and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. See you again next Wednesday. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.